1961, Roswell, USA. The sun's out, there's a parade today, the diner does a decent milkshake and the paperboy knows your name. Two women sit outside a cafe and dream about the future. One of them's getting married soon. The other just bought a person. On the other side of town, men in white cloaks are recruiting. Nobody tries to stop them. If you cast your eyes up, you'll see a drone floating lazily up the street. If you glance at the shops, you'll see swastikas in the windows. Despite the fact Nazi symbology is draped everywhere, we still know this to be the United States of America. Why is that? Wipe away the fact it fades in on screen. That's semantics. Nobody loves a guy who zooms in on semantics. Focus on the visual language. It's so clean in Roswell that it doesn't feel infected by the Nazis. It feels like it's complementing them. Wolfenstein: The New Colossus spends 15 hours trying to answer that question. It takes the foundations of its fantastic predecessor, The New Order, and reorients itself. Where the first game reveled in how deeply weird Nazis are, this sequel focuses on America with sharp, disturbed teeth. It's why this video is going to follow a similar structure to my New Order one. There, we looked at the weird, real-life Nazism that inspired Wolfenstein's monsters. Here, we're going to focus squarely on America. We already know what BJ Blazkowicz is fighting against. Now, it's time to ask what he's fighting for. What do you think, BJ? Does that sound fair? Thanks, buddy. But before it's a piece of political fiction, Wolfenstein is a video game. And as a sequel, it's kind of a clumsy one. Its pacing lurches, its level design is frustrating and clunky, stealth is theoretically present and functionally a dare. Some of the minor flaws from the New Order become major ones here in a way that betrays its ambition. Yet, underneath the jank is a shooter that's doing something almost nothing else in the genre has the nerve to do. It looks at a well-trodden premise, what if the Nazis won, and asks a much worse question. What if they didn't have to change that much to do it? The horror of the New Colossus is how much monstrous machinery was already lying around waiting for someone to plug in. The German-American Bund, the AFC, the KKK, and Jim Crow. The game's Nazis didn't import their ideology wholesale, a lot of it was already here. Even as the Nazis sneered at America, they took notes from it. If you watched my video on the New Order, you'll recognize this man, Alfred Rosenberg, a senior member of the Nazi Party. In The Myth of the 20th Century, he wrote, "The USA, according to universal agreement of all travelers, is a magnificent land of the future. It has the great task of throwing aside all outworn ideas that date from before its foundation. It can proceed with youthful strength to set up the new idea of a racial state. Awakened Americans already saw the necessity for the expulsion and resettlement of the blacks and the yellow men." This reading isn't exclusive to Wolfenstein. In fact, any Nazis won story worth its salt explores it, and nobody drew it sharper than Philip K. Dick. The Man in the High Castle, released in 1962, is the definitive version of this story. Dick's conquered America is a place of quiet dread, of collaboration and adaptation, where the scariest thing is how comfortable everyone gets. While the game's creative director, Jens Mattis, has said that he didn't read the novel or watch the show, The New Colossus is, in a lot of ways, the same argument as High Castle. It just has a very different payoff. Where High Castle whispers, Wolfenstein screams. In places, the game feels underdeveloped. It regularly feels clumsy, but if you push through the awkward level design and weirdly paced fights, one thing stays the same. We're in the Nazi killing business. And business is good. This is a commentary, critique, and historical analysis of Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. This is most authentic of dying old US culture, a rare, retained artifact carrying the flavor of bygone halcyon days. Mr. Baines opened the box. In it lay a Mickey Mouse wristwatch and a pad of black velvet. BJ Blazkowicz is dying. Following the explosive end to the New Order, he's bleeding out, bathed in warm light as his friends try to save his life. Death at the gates again, howling his name. He's sorry he made it wait. It's important that the New Colossus puts us here for two reasons. The first is so the story stakes aren't wiped away. In killing Death's Head, BJ took a grenade to the face. It's something that will mechanically define the first half of the game. The second reason is because BJ is an all-American hero, so his crumbling, broken body runs parallel to Wolfenstein's United States, conquered by the Nazis. But what is BJ's America? He never defines it, but if we asked him to, what would he say? Our opening leads us to a few answers. As he flits between life and death, he thinks back to his childhood.
My father told me, if I ever had a son, I should give this to him.
Zofia Blaskovich, BJ's mother, was a dreamer. The life she embodied, an immigrant who found love and a white picket fence in the land of the free, was a fiction. One day, when he was a boy, she gave him a family heirloom, an old engagement ring, imagining a future where he'll meet the woman of his dreams and live happily ever after. It was, in the moment, a way of distracting BJ from the cruelty of his father, Rip. Wolfenstein constantly wrestles with how reality can be warped or misinterpreted. Nazi propaganda, BJ's failed execution, Super Specia's belief that Nazis are aliens. But it's notable that Zofia, as a representative of BJ's American dream, later appears as a literal illusion. He hallucinates her when all seems lost. A fantasy. Rip Blaskovich is treated very differently. He believes in a world where you're predator or prey. He beats Zofia and BJ with angry, resentful fists. He buys into Nazi race theory. He's not a fantasy. In present day, BJ doesn't hallucinate him. He's very, very real. There's a lot of tragedy that surrounds BJ as a main character. Life has bludgeoned him so much that it's a miracle he came out the other side, but his experiences have coloured a hazy, confused idea of what his country is. He gets his hardened bloodthirst from his father. He gets his romantic idealism from his mother. Mix that up in a melting pot and you have a cold killer who fights for truth and justice in the American way, but never articulates what the American way is. Would he agree with political thinker John L. O'Sullivan, who believed the US should expand, writing, "Our manifest destiny is to overspread the continent allotted by Providence for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions." Would he listen to the suffragette Jane Addams, who said, "The good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life"? One thing we know for certain is he wouldn't like George Lincoln Rockwell, founder of the American Nazi Party, who said, "White power! We're going to save the white race!" One of his touchstones is in the game's name. The new Colossus, Emma Lazarus's poem that's carved on the Statue of Liberty, is quoted by him at the end of The New Order. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses," he whispers, yearning to breathe free. It's a poem that dreams of America, a place of safety, a welcome for refugees, a melting pot of cultures that coexist in collaboration with other countries. It was, after all, a gift from the French. It's such a pillar of American iconography that in the Man in the High Castle TV show, it's a major plot point that the Nazis eventually destroy it. To BJ, the new Colossus describes two things: his country and family. At the end of The New Order, he uses the poem to describe his partner, Anya Olawa. As he recovers from his injuries, we see that she's pregnant with twins. A shame, he thinks. He's going to die before he can raise them.
I'm a burden.
Don't be stupid. Okay. Let's get you up.
Whatever it costs to keep him breathing, the Kreisau Circle pays it. To save BJ, they pump him so full of donated blood that he's basically a patchwork of his friends. He quite literally carries them with him. And then in the final third, we swap it for the body of a Nazi super soldier, but don't worry about that bit. 5 months pass, and when BJ finally wakes, his body's broken in ways the game is blunt about. He spends the opening of his own sequel fighting in a wheelchair. His ruined body is a mechanic, his health gets cut in half. He is, mathematically, the most fragile he will ever be, and the game picks this exact moment to throw Frau Irene Engel into the mix. She and her men storm our U-boat and unleash hell. The pulp of the sequence keeps it feeling bombastic rather than depressing. Despite the squeaky wheelchair, BJ can still do stealth takedowns while sitting. The animation accounts for it. The siege is so frenetic that Max Haas, a pacifist, even picks up an assault rifle and lets rip. Set Roth, mad scientist that he is, has rigged the corridors with microwave death traps. You can lure Nazis into them and watch as they pop into gooey, delicious pieces. So maybe this is BJ's America. No flags or founding documents, but a collection of people of all creeds united in one purpose. It's Anya, a future filled with children, a crew of the old and the weak. If BJ's America is a U-boat and some friends, perhaps he thinks a country is just a line on a map. Like Philip K. Dick wrote, it will end someday, the very idea of place. Not governed and governing, but people. Listen to his language and you'll notice he never says he wants to restore the US. He isn't trying to rewind to some golden America. What he's chasing isn't a place at all. It's an idea he could have found anywhere. Capital F freedom. Pure liberty. The thing that, according to the political advocacy group Freedom House, at least 88 other countries already have. BJ sees it as his North Star. He'll eventually growl that when you take freedom away from the American people, you're playing with fire. Irene Engel disagrees.
I'm willing to spare the life of every one of you vessel if you surrender. The doors are open. Come alone.
Engel's men overwhelm the boat. Caroline Becker, leader of the Kreisau Circle, kicks ass in the ancient Dat Yeshud body armor we gave her back in the New Order, but even our magic toys aren't enough. Suddenly, we're somewhere horribly familiar. BJ on the floor, helpless, as a monster monologues. But Engel isn't Death's Head. Death's Head wanted compliance. Engel wants an audience. This is personal for her. Revenge against Terror Billy for mutilating her and killing her toy boy. She's been planning this for months, and she wants it broadcast. Engel's been promoted. The Reich handed her the Ausschmerzer, a floating fortress that stalks the United States, her headquarters as she hunts for terrorists. There's a lot of information to digest in our opening, so you would be forgiven for missing one small but oh so important detail as BJ is captured. The guard that hauls us, that sneers at us for being in a wheelchair, isn't even German. He's got an American accent.
You going to run us over with your little wheelchair?
We're barely out of the prologue, and the game has already made its entire argument. Engel didn't need the Ausschmerzer. Some Americans welcomed the Nazis with open arms. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter, Brian Bloom, BJ's actor, said, "There's some incredible FaceTime between BJ and Engel. They tend to resolve conflict through violence, and these are two individuals who are probably seeking out each other to not only cut off the head of the snake, but to face the best counter or opposite that validates their existence."
Caroline Becker, leader of the Kreisau Circle. The criminal mastermind.
Never give up, Blaskovich. Never give in to these people.
Engel doesn't behead BJ, not yet, but she nabs a consolation prize, the head of Caroline Becker, the Kreisau Circle's leader. BJ hauls himself into her power armor, the dying man gets his legs back, and we escape as Engel cackles and shrieks. Despite the size and heft of that armor, he still keeps his own little America close. He wears the battered leather jacket that Anya's grandfather gave him in the first game. Supersuit's spikes poke through it now so he looks deranged. Half corpse, half machine, all spite. It's awesome. His intangible America makes him a perfect hero for a story like this. He's the framework of the United States molded into a man. He holds these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that declaration, as gorgeous as it is, crashes into the real America that he knows. It didn't stop Jefferson's hypocrisy in keeping slaves, and it doesn't stop BJ's entire lived experience. His whole shtick is walking across the United States yelling, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't America," despite the fact everything he's seen and everything we will see says otherwise. It's like he said 14 years ago, the monster never dies, no matter how many times you kill it. Just sheds its skin and changes shape. Germany and America aren't the only countries where it's lived. My home, the UK, joins them. But BJ is American, so that is where we'll stay. Rosenberg's well-known powerful pamphlet was issued in 1958. The word had first shown up then. As to the final solution of the African problem, it said, "We have almost achieved our objectives."
William.
I can still smell her in here.
Caroline's death is a major blow. It exposes the cracks in the Kreisau Circle. They need someone to lead them. Without a vision, they're just pirates in a U-boat. The Circle's only course of action is to send her body out to sea, a warrior's funeral, and fulfill her dying wish. She wanted to free the US and use it as a stepping stone to eradicate the Nazis. BJ is only too happy to oblige. Anya lays out the plan. A leading American resistance group is in Manhattan, the Black Revolutionary Front. Unfortunately, Manhattan is where the Nazis dropped an atom bomb. BJ's suit will protect him from the radiation, but this is a solo mission, just the way he likes it. It's interesting that Wolfenstein and The Man in the High Castle both make nuclear weapons the catalyst in how the Nazis won. Robot dogs and ancient stolen technologies would have been enough of an explanation, but the new Colossus makes a real point to highlight just how cruel a weapon this is and how monstrous the Nazis are for using it. Manhattan is in ruins, littered with corpses. We see huddled masses that died in shelters, letters and memos that talk about the before and after. Numerous survivors describe in visceral, gut-wrenching detail about what they saw. Skin melting to the point it looks like a shirt 2 sizes too big. What creatures would do this? And how could the United States do it twice? The sins of the US didn't just inspire Wolfenstein's Nazis, though assigning their greatest cruelty to the Reich is a hell of a parallel for what the new Colossus is saying. They also helped to inspire the real ones. So, let's play a quick game. I show a quote on screen, and you tell me if it's a 20th century Nazi or a 20th century American. Number 1. We have only one task, to stand firm and carry on the racial struggle without mercy. Our concern, our duty, is our people and our blood. Feel free to pause and chuck your answer in the comments to boost the video. Ready? The answer is Nazi! Heinrich Himmler said it. You thought I'd start with an American to prove a point, didn't you? Well, that's not how the game works. Quote number 2. Biological laws tell us that certain divergent people will not mix or blend. The Nordics propagate themselves successfully. With other races, the outcome shows deterioration on both sides. The answer is American. That was soon-to-be President Calvin Coolidge in 1921. Quote number 3. A rigid system of selection through the elimination of those who are weak or unfit can be applied to an ever-widening circle of social discards. The answer is American. That was Madison Grant in 1916, a man who got fan mail from Hitler. Hitler actually commended America's approach to non-white races before he even took power. In Mein Kampf, he wrote, "The American Union categorically refuses the immigration of physically unhealthy elements and simply excludes the immigration of certain races. In these respects, America already pays obeisance to the characteristic Volkish conception of the state." Nazis published maps of America that show the different rights of black citizens across different states. Nazi magazines, like News Volk, led articles on black birth rates, warning of how they'll soon overtake the white population and it should serve as a warning to all. The Nuremberg laws that formally separated Germans into citizens and nationals took note from America's citizenship laws that legally defined Native Americans as a separate entity with different rights. America was the first country to have miscegenation laws banning mixed-race relationships. The Nazis followed suit. James Whitman notes in his fascinating book, Hitler's American Model, that the Nazis were looking for authoritative frameworks for the Nuremberg laws, and America was the only framework available. The British Empire had social laws and a couple of individual pieces of legislation, but the United States had a complex model, and the Nazis loved their models. Hell, the Nazi Handbook for Law and Legislation encourages its reader to draw comparisons to how the US handles race. Policymakers, pundits, and academics repeatedly wrote about how the US, for lack of a better term, gets it when it comes to forming an Aryan state. Others, like Alfred Rosenberg, were baffled, admiring, and curious about how the US could be built on freedom and equality for all, while whipping up laws and loopholes that completely contradicted it. For the Nazis, America wobbled on a tightrope between a white supremacist utopia and a melting pot of mixed races. They desperately wanted to be friends before the Second World War, and I've not even mentioned Jim Crow yet. So let's do that. The New Order introduced the internal conflict to the US long before BJ returned home. The mysterious J, Jimi Hendrix, never forget, Machine Games just put Jimi Hendrix in their Nazi killing game, lay it all out for BJ halfway through the campaign. He was an African American fighting a regime that he couldn't help but recognize. The new Colossus takes that small narrative beat and expands it with Grace Walker and the Black Revolutionary Front.
Just who the fuck are you, white boy?
Stay calm. Let me first make it absolutely clear that I am not a Nazi.
What you say? You say you're a Nazi?
No, I am not a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi, okay?
At the top of the Empire State Building, Grace and her people are holding off the worst of Manhattan's radiation. She and her partner Super Spesh are immediately suspicious of BJ. It's hard to blame them. He's a big, Aryan-looking monster in a magic suit climbing up their elevator shaft. But when they learn who he is and why he's here, they hear him out. They've been in hiding, planning their next move. Manhattan might have radiation, but until recently, it didn't have Nazis. She's haunted by what she's seen following the bomb. Monsters didn't do this, men did. And like she tells BJ, she's been fighting long before the Nazis arrived. Grace is from Mississippi, so she's lived through the darkest parts of segregation. The Duck Hill lynchings, for example, saw Roosevelt Towns and Robert McDaniels tortured with a blowtorch in 1937. Wolfenstein doesn't mention it, but it's a world Grace knows. She grew up in a town where the right to vote was suppressed by poll taxes and bullshit literacy tests created explicitly to subjugate black voices. The Nazis knew all about Jim Crow, and some of them actually thought America's approach was too extreme. Take the one-drop rule. This was the principle enforced across multiple US states that a single drop of African ancestry made you legally black. When Nazi lawyers gathered in 1934 to start drafting the Nuremberg laws, even the radicals in the room, like Roland Friesler, president of Hitler's People's Court, balked at that one. Not out of mercy, but because they thought one drop was too crude, too sweeping, too racist even for them. The point of looking at America was to find an international precedent for what they wanted to do, an excuse. After all, global relations were still important at this point, and they didn't want to piss off the rest of the world. They found that excuse in the US. However, the other issue the Nazis raised at that meeting was the purpose of these race laws. Franz Gertner, the Minister of Justice, presented his findings on American segregation, saying, "Almost all American states have race legislation. The races that must be defended against are characterized in different ways, but they often speak of African descent, and there are a few sections which make positive reference to the Caucasian race." That is not uninteresting, since I believe there is a jurisprudence on the question of whether Jews belong to the Caucasian race. It's not that the Nazis copied America's homework, rubbed out the word black and scribbled in Jew. They noted that identifying African Americans, Asians, Native Americans was easier than identifying Jewish Germans who had generational roots. The point of Jim Crow was subjugation. That was easy. The point of the Nuremberg laws was exile, but the parallels hold up disturbingly well in practice. Disenfranchisement, segregation in public life, purposeful economic strangulation. For someone like Grace, who lived it, or someone like BJ, who can't stand watching an underdog get kicked, of course they want to get their hands bloody, even if they clash as characters. Nazi-killing maniac he might be, but BJ is always righteous and decent. Grace is always righteous and indecent. She's kind of an asshole, and in trying to be pulpy, witty, and snappy, the new Colossus struggles to make her fit naturally.
We've been fighting every motherfucking day, Blazkowicz. White America, though? They done packed up and given in. See, I guess they don't have the fighting spirit no more. Nah, they just do whatever the fucking Fuhrer tells them to do.
That's baloney. They want to fight the Nazis just as much as we do.
When she joins the Kreisau Circle, she moves straight into Caroline's room and takes over as leader. She calls Fergus English, for God's sake. But the most shocking piece of imagery is her introduction. When we first meet her, she smokes while breastfeeding her baby, a choice that means our first impression of her is uncomfortable. BJ is charmed by Grace, despite her standoffish nature. She's still fighting, that's all he needs to know to earn his respect. White America got cozy, she didn't. Under the Nazis, the Ku Klux Klan are running the American South. BJ's response is fair, romantic, and practical. Forget about the turncoats, focus on the grassroots. It's easy to get blinded by arseholes and forget the good guys. Germany wasn't 100% Nazi, and America isn't 100% Klan. He hopes that when all of this is over, the America he knew will become the America he wants. As far as controversy goes, Grace is to the new Colossus what Dat You Should was to the New Order. If Dat You Should played with the idea of a magical Jew society, Grace wears the mask of blaxploitation. Even smoking while breastfeeding is a visual gag that references this stereotype of a welfare queen. But she's not a character that's sidelined. She joins the core cast, leads the team for the rest of the game, and goes through her own trials, tribulations, loves, and losses. Comparisons have been made between Grace and blaxploitation heroine Pam Grier, but Wolfenstein's creative director said that wasn't on purpose. Speaking to CG Magazine, he said, "When we cast Grace, we found this amazing actor, Deborah Wilson, and she really pushed it over the top. I think a lot of what Grace is comes down to Wilson's performance, and I don't really know what her influences are. Grace isn't particularly likable, but likable isn't what the Resistance needs right now. It's someone with a plan. Caroline left a void, and as we'll soon see, Grace has the tools to fill it." That's the task of art, Lotz said. To advance the spirituality of man over the sensual. Your abstract art represents a period of spiritual decadence, of spiritual chaos, due to the disintegration of society. Those times are over. Art has to go on. It can't stay still.
The, touchy Englishman is gonna show you where to set up shop. After that, I want you to look around, find a place to bunk in, get to know the boat folk, and hey, don't start no shit.
Welcome to Eva's Hammer, Resistance HQ, our home for the game, and where we'll spend a lot of our time. There's a lot to see and a lot to talk about, so take your shoes off and I'll give you the house tour. I promise this is not a metaphor. Is that going to date the video? Anyway, let's start right here, the helm. It's mission control, people everywhere muttering into radios or gossiping. Eva's Hammer is overflowing with people. This isn't like Resistance HQ back in the New Order. Every NPC gets a name and a personality. Thin ones, sure, but a lot of them chat relentlessly about their old lives, dreams, or what we're going to do next. After Caroline dies, we catch a pair in the balcony wondering who's going to lead them, worried that it'll be Fergus, the grumpy Scotsman, or Wyatt, the Boy Scout. Later, a character called the Professor rants that she's caught in a love triangle. A woman called Maria gets teased for having a crush on Fergus, and we can pick up optional letters and diary entries that trace how she's closing herself off from the rest of the crew. It doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't need to, but it humanizes the Resistance, something that is important now that our cast has expanded so thoroughly and lost that cozy feeling that the New Order's headquarters relied on. Case in point, Set Roth. Follow the smell of formaldehyde and you'll find him tinkering away in his lab.
No! What the hell is that thing?
The fruit of his labor is, I'm sorry to report, a squirrel monkey with a Siamese cat's head grafted onto it. He calls her Shoshana. It's funny, it's disgusting. It's Chekhov's cat monkey, here to save the day later. It is exactly the kind of flaw the game is happy to hand its heroes. Set's a genius and a mad scientist, and he will later throw an actual tantrum when Max Haas beats him at chess. I love all of this. These people are messy, petty, occasionally deranged. The new Colossus has them bickering more than the previous game, wearing their faults on their sleeve. That's the whole point, but admittedly, it's a slippery point when we bring in Frau Engel's daughter, Sigrun.
What the fuck is she even doing here?
Grace, why? She's good people.
She's a fucking Nazi.
After rebelling against her mother, Sigrun has joined the Resistance. Grace doesn't trust her, neither does Anya. Sigrun accompanied her mother on a lot of evil field trips, and even though she saved BJ, Fergus, and Wyatt at the start of the game, she didn't act fast enough to save Caroline. Grace keeps her distance, needles her, treats her like a loaded gun. Wyatt and Fergus are initially kind to her in their own ways, but basically ignore her after the opening. BJ calls Grace out exactly once, and then never brings it up again. Is once enough? Here's my problem. The game has already spent an entire prior installment building the case that a Nazi can be unmade. Klaus, the ex-SS man who spent his redemption raising Max without fanfare. It was delicate and understated, just a changed man doing the work. Sigrun is handled less tactfully. The new Colossus repeatedly treats her like a punchline. She gets wrapped up in a love triangle. She shags Bombati while the gang are preparing for a mission. There's a great moment where she talks about how handsome the Beatles are. Hell, she even bursts into song. The humor is there to reinforce that she is completely harmless. She rebelled against Frau Engel, and now she's part of the resistance. But because that's how it's framed, it's hard to align ourselves when characters don't trust her. Grace, a person with a very earned reason to be suspicious of anyone who flew a swastika, is the one that needs to come around. The game doesn't ask whether Grace is right to be careful. Sigrun is such a joke that we know she isn't. It treats her caution as a rough edge to be sanded off. She's waiting for Sigrun to roar and fight, not dance around singing. The Reich sorts humanity by blood. Wolfenstein sorts it by what you do, and is happy to let its heroes do something as stupid as building a cat monkey or paranoid as bullying someone who clearly isn't the enemy, because being flawed and being a Nazi are not the same thing. With Sigrun, Grace, and eventually the New Orleans Resistance, the vibe on the ship evolves as the game goes on. That happened in the New Order as well, but it's more integrated here. The feeling of Eva's hammer shifts. At the start, it's morbid. Anya sobs as she reads over Caroline's old diaries. BJ wanders around absently, talking to ghosts. Now that Grace is here with her people, though, a fire rumbles through the U-boat's veins. They bring a fresh perspective, setting up Hacker Central in the next room to intercept messages from the enemy. It's through those messages that the helm earns its keep. Behind the radios sits the Enigma machine, and behind that, a great glowing war map of the United States. You decrypt codes looted off dead Nazi commanders, and each successful decode pins an Uber commander to the map. They're all in places we've already been to, but there's a fantastic, tangible reward for some of these. Body upgrades for BJ that give him fresh, unique abilities, stuff that actually changes how you play. To add to this, some of the districts you return to are completely redesigned just for that mission. One sends you back to BJ's childhood home in Mesquite. The Nazis have gutted it, turned it into a film set to shoot a propaganda movie about him. You can rifle through the script pages, the director's notes, and Zofia's diary while you're there. Another just straight up lets you go and kill members of the Ku Klux Klan, which, given everything we've just walked through about who actually built this country's race laws, is about as on the nose as catharsis gets. However, despite my tone of voice, I have a scream of issues with the Enigma machine, and this speaks to a general pacing issue Eva's hammer has. This whole system unlocks too late and gives too little too slowly. The war map only switches on like 2 hours before the end of the game. Uber Commander hunts cost a stingy 2 to 8 codes each to unlock, which you will lose whether you complete the decryption or not. Even if you diligently knife every commander in the campaign, you won't have enough codes to clear the board, which means you have to grind the war table just to unlock more missions. At no point during a Wolfenstein game should I be grinding for resources. I hope you're listening, Wolfenstein Youngblood. It's a system that wants to be a slow burn revolution that you chip away at across the whole game, but it's been bolted into the back half. So instead of seasoning the campaign, it clots into a lump of optional busywork right when the main story is trying to sprint to its finish. Those pacing problems appear elsewhere too. The boat itself keeps finding reasons to send you crawling through its guts. Some Nazis have stowed away on it, so down into the bowels you go to flush them out. You need to go and get a warhead for Grace, so off you travel shooting drones and robots in cramped maintenance corridors. To the game's credit, it's a step up from the equivalent slog in the New Order, where you'd swat 3 lonely drones and call it a level, but it's still chores, and not even BJ's inner monologue can soften that feeling.
I'm the damn Tin Man. How am I gonna get close to you?
I don't care. We'll figure something out, we always do.
It's on one of those trips that BJ, talking to Caroline, says that he's come to terms with his fate. He's dying. The supersuit can only hold him together for so long, and he's acutely aware of what that means. Anya will have to raise their children alone. After a lifetime of fighting, the war has finally got to him. He decides to keep her at arm's length so she doesn't worry, but that plan quickly evaporates. Who wants to be remembered for the secrets that they kept? While there's a quiet sadness that runs through their scenes together, it's contrasted delicately by Grace and Super Spesh. They're happy, healthy parents who haven't let the fight get in the way of that. An echo of what BJ and Anya were that clouds the first half of the game. Let's give them some space and head out to the main deck. The game tries to make Eva's hammer feel cozy. Sofas, rugs, plants and books line the walkways where bohemians hang out and talk about Nazi killing. Clothes hang on lines over 2 balconies. Fairy lights twinkle everywhere you look to add colour to distract from the fact that we are in a cold, claustrophobic machine miles underwater. Further in is the Cries-Out Club, a makeshift bar above the canteen, draped in patterned sheets. The bartender passes out cold ones and whispers nervously about the voices in her head. It's a trophy room. Someone's dragged a jukebox on board for the records that we find. The gold we collect sits on a nearby shelf, filling up as the game goes on. A film projector has been set up, but we'll sadly never use it, a missed opportunity that relegates it to scene dressing. Don't be too disappointed though, because there's something even better here. Wolfenstein 3D. It's an arcade machine that lets us play an alternate version of Wolfenstein 3D, propaganda created by the Nazis. Instead of BJ killing bad guys, we're a Nazi spy working for Frau Engel, killing resistance fighters. BJ, Anya, Max and more are all boss fights. It's wonderful. It's surprisingly tough. The size might swallow you up, so watch your step, but Max Haas, ever the artist, has drawn colourful signs that guide you around. In fact, if you're looking for charm, you'll find it with Max. He's drawn and painted on everything. If you follow me into the hangar, you'll see a chopper dressed up in flower power. Max's room has small slips of paper that, toward the end, we see are parts of a mural he's working on for Klaus Kreutz. I have to wonder if Max's desperation to save a pig on the boat is because he couldn't save Klaus in the New Order. The revolution will be televised, and if he has his way, it'll be full Technicolor. We've already talked about Grace's experience of the US, but it's worth putting that question to other members of the Cries-Out Circle. The New Order's cast was made up of people the Nazis rejected or terrorized. Would things be different in America? No. If Max was in the state of Virginia, he likely would have suffered the same fate as this woman, Carrie Buck. In 1927, she was legally designated as feeble-minded. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. orders she be sterilized because, quote, "It is better for all the world if society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough." Carrie Buck wasn't even disabled. She was raped by her foster family's nephew and they institutionalized her out of shame. If Max was in Indiana or California, he'd suffer a similar fate. The Nazis' law for the prevention of offspring with hereditary diseases was modelled on laws in California. The defeat of the Nazis didn't make that law go away. Forced sterilizations were legal until 1979. 20,000 disabled people, Mexican immigrants, and so-called promiscuous women were targeted. Looking at some of the comments on my New Order video, some of you think that's a good thing because you're a bunch of fucking freaks. Fergus and Wyatt, 2 men struggling with PTSD, are fleshed out further in the new Colossus. They're both fatigued and exhausted, but the way they work through it is very different.
Old Horton's patented hangover blaster always delivers. Boom!
What are you lot loitering around for, huh? Haven't we got a mission briefing to attend? The party's over.
Fergus is wrapped in self-loathing. If you follow me to his room, you'll see a punching bag that we can smack around. It hurts. BJ theorizes that it's full of rocks. Has Fergus done this so he can hurt himself? At the start of the game, he gets his arm cut off and gets a robotic prosthetic, but it repeatedly beats the shit out of him. It's strange. The arm should work fine, but his subconscious is torturing him, and the arm is its weapon. He's every bit as funny as he was in the New Order. His antagonistic relationship with Grace has some of the game's best insults. She calls him English, and he bites back with language that I can't repeat. But he also descends as the story goes on. Eventually, Max will colour in his favourite t-shirt, a memento of his RAF days, back when things made sense. He crumples when he finds out. While all of this is tragic, he feels less important than Wyatt does. The new Colossus takes whatever choice you made in the New Order and runs with it, which is damn admirable, but both games seem more invested in Wyatt's arc than Fergus's.
I'm not stupid, Captain. I saw the look in your eye up there when Frau Engel had you under her thumb. All right, the fire is gone out and you are just on autopilot now until you hit the wall. Am I wrong, Captain?
If Fergus loses an arm, Wyatt loses an ear. It's the straw that breaks him. He finds solace in the music of Jimi Hendrix, something that makes their friendship in the first game feel overt, and his sacrifice feel potent. In Fergus's timeline, Jimmy was replaced by Tekla, and unfortunately the new Colossus never mentions her. While listening to Jimmy's tapes, Wyatt finds some old drugs, and for the rest of the game, he's high. Very high. So high, in fact, that his third eye opens and he tells the Jewish inventor Seth Roth about his visions. If Fergus drowns in his trauma, Wyatt trips through it, finding solace in spirituality. It's hard not to look at Fergus and Wyatt and think of America's most brilliant tactician, General George Patton. If he met either of them, he'd likely beat them and call them cowards for wallowing in their shell shock. That's exactly what he did in 1943, a couple of years before he'd write this about the Jews, Slavs, and Poles he was meant to be liberating. Harrison and his ilk believe that the displaced person is a human being, which he is not. And this applies particularly to the Jews, who are lower than animals. Patton wouldn't like Anya, it seems, what with her being Polish and displaced, but he's just one man. What about the institution of America in the 20th century? Well, if Anya fled persecution and travelled to the US, she would have been turned away. That's exactly what happened to refugees on board the MS St. Louis in 1939. The United States immigration policy was explicitly based on race signs. Only a tiny amount of Polish people were allowed into the country because they were deemed inferior. So, any refugees who tried to escape to America were sent right back to the Nazis. So, with all of this in mind, what does it say that Resistance HQ is literally a Nazi U-boat? Maybe it says there was never a clean place to fight from in the first place. The Resistance can't find some untainted scrap of America to plant a flag on. No amount of fairy lights can hide the swastikas, the same way no amount of Lady Liberty ever quite hid the slavery, conquest, eugenics policies, or segregation. So, you do the only thing you can. You take the machine that was built to kill you, and you make it a home anyway. Hang your washing in it, drag a jukebox on board. You turn their propaganda into an arcade game and laugh at it. And if you're Max Haas, a man both regimes in this video would have thrown away, you paint over the steel, one wall at a time. If the Nazis hadn't won, communism would rule everywhere, Roberts said. We have had to suffer to pay the cost, but we did it for a good cause, to stop Slavic world inundation. In 2017, Jens Mattis spoke to GameBeat, saying, "We involve some of Roswell's mythology in the story of this game. Going here is a really interesting way for us to show what Main Street America would be like under Nazi oppression. We felt like it ticked a lot of boxes as far as what made us excited. What would it look like if the Nazis were trying to subvert American culture?" Subvert is an interesting word there. The New Order built a weird Reich. New Colossus subverts an existing aesthetic. When it came to world design, Machine Games took the most recognizable visual language in the world, mid-century American consumer culture, and let the Nazis colonize it rather than replace it. Purely through the visuals in Roswell, we see an America appropriated, not conquered.
Okay, Blazkowicz, look for Papa Joe's All-American Diner. Meet Super Special inside the restaurant. Do not break cover.
Grace has a plan so insane that it might just work. The Oberkommando, Nazi senior leadership, is in Roswell, specifically Area 52. We are going to break in, plant a nuclear warhead, and blow them all to hell. Everybody is on board with this. Nobody questions the fact that we're using a nuke after what we saw in Manhattan. Unfortunately, you'll have to get used to that. Set has disguised the nuke as a fire extinguisher. BJ's job is to smuggle it in. Roswell is the most captivating part of the game. It drips with detail and cool scene dressing, so as BJ takes in the sights, let's talk world design. Machinery and industrialization dominated the New Order's London. Aside from a red bus that's on screen for 2 seconds and Big Ben, so distant you'd be forgiven if you missed it, there is nothing recognizably British about Nazi Britain. Nothing about this street, this construction site, or this museum tells us that we're in the United Kingdom. The Nazis swept in and transformed the culture quickly. Hell, fish and chips are replaced to be bratwurst and chips, but Roswell feels like America. The iconography is everywhere to reinforce it. Slavery has returned, it hasn't been imported over. The KKK walk the streets. Blitzmensch, a superhero cartoon that takes Captain America and Nazifies him, is advertised repeatedly. An American diner is our rendezvous point. The cinema references the Nickelodeon. Even milkshakes, the best thing to come out of America, are beloved by everyone, especially Nazis. But it is all slowly being warped and curdled. Wolfenstein's Nazis seized the chance to take over Hollywood, and we hear some locals talk about the corruption and depraved filth that have been purged from the silver screen. They're so distracted by the moral value of the entertainment they consume that they can't see the evil bullshit happening in the country. Good thing that doesn't happen today. Every Nazi picture is propaganda. When BJ arrives, How the West Was Saved is playing, a film that paints the genocide of Native Americans as a positive cleansing force. The Nazis have taken America's shame and turned it into something to celebrate. Oh, and here's a not-so-fun fact. L. Frank Baum would have approved. In 1890, he wrote, "The whites, by law of conquest, by justice of civilization, are masters of the American continent. The best safety of the frontier settlements will be secured by the total annihilation of the few remaining Indians. Having wronged them for centuries, we had better, in order to protect our civilization, follow it up by one more wrong and wipe these untamed and untamable creatures from the face of the earth." L. Frank Baum might ring a bell because he wrote The Wizard of Oz. The Reich have spent over a decade seeping into America. Liberation is a lie that spread through the propaganda. It seems the Nazis have quickly figured out that freedom is a catch-all term the United States throws around like confetti, so the Reich's forces have been renamed to Liberator Squads. God is wielded as a weapon of the Reich to make the conquest seem just. When we arrive, people talk about the upcoming Changeover Day, a day where American English will be outlawed and everyone will be expected to speak German. Nazis quiz people in the street. A TV show, German or Else, turns the idea into entertainment so it can be digestible. Mass-produced cigarettes, an enterprise the US pioneered with the American Tobacco Company, are everywhere.
I'll tell you a story you'll never forget. A story about you and your cigarette.
But now they have swastikas on them. God damn it, Nazis. You ruined smoking. Ah well, at least we got fucking Roombas now. Machine Games were determined not to turn the regime into a cartoon, but that doesn't mean the world is exclusively somber. There's plenty of comedy to point to, even outside of Roswell. Later, a commander on Venus has turned his bedroom into a shrine to Frau Engel. Seems she's got a secret admirer. When the game chews on its environmental storytelling, it can be absolutely breathtaking, but I wish it went a step further with its collectibles. Diaries, newspapers, and memos are everywhere. There is plenty to read, but the new Colossus also introduces interview tapes. Now that description might make you think that they're audio logs, but they're not. No sound, no voice actor. They're just more text to read. It's a missed opportunity because some of the text is really interesting or funny, but giving them a voice actor would make them memorable.
One strawberry milkshake coming right up.
Fireman, I recognize your face. Very Aryan face at this too. Are you out of Station 1?
A ticker tape parade is in full swing here. When BJ sees it, he scoffs in disgust. Look at these people, celebrating their own destruction. There are plenty of NPCs whooping and hollering, but not everyone is on board with the regime. We see someone kick a vending machine and mutter that it's full of crowd shit. A drunk man in an alleyway shouts about Nazi traitors. A paperboy recognizes BJ and whispers, "I'm behind you all the way." These are important details. Who wants to save an America that doesn't want to save itself? But for every paperboy or homeless person, there's a woman flirting with a Nazi officer or a real-life sympathizer. Meet Fritz Kuhn, a real-life American who looked at 1930s New York and thought, you know what this country needs? A Führer. Preferably me. His German-American Bund packed 20,000 people into Madison Square Garden in 1939 for a rally that they billed with a completely straight face as pro-American. They held the Pledge of Allegiance. They erected a 30-foot portrait of George Washington, swastikas either side. At the rally, Kuhn demanded, quote, "a socially just, white, Gentile-ruled United States." The self-appointed American Führer's reign then ended not with a bang, but with an embezzlement charge. It emerged he'd been stealing money from the Bund to fund his mistresses. Then there's Gerald Winrod, a Kansas preacher that the press dubbed the Jayhawk Nazi. Winrod knocked up homemade genealogy charts, apparently proving that Franklin D. Roosevelt was secretly Jewish. He ran for the US Senate in 1938 and pulled 53,000 votes. My personal favourite is William Dudley Pelley, founder of the Silver Shirts. This was a real paramilitary he dressed in uniforms copied straight from Hitler's brown shirts, only, you know, silver, cause subtlety. He promised to, quote, save America just as Mussolini and his black shirts saved Italy, and as Hitler and his brown shirts saved Germany. Pelley wanted to rule as America's dictator under the title The Chief. He ran for president in 1936 and believed that Jewish people were literally possessed by demons. He'd have fit in nicely with the Nazi belief that Aryans came from the moon. Before you comfort yourself that this was all cranks and small-town preachers, in 1934, Roscoe Pound, the Dean of Harvard Law School, one of the most cited legal minds in American history, cheerfully accepted an honorary degree from the University of Berlin. Fresh back from Nazi Germany, the year after the book burnings, he assured reporters there was no persecution of Jewish scholars and described Hitler approvingly as a man who could bring Central Europe freedom. The Frankfurter Papers detail his sympathies. Quote, Pound reckoned that the American and English rendering of Hitler's speech was a scandal. He believed there was no persecution of Jewish scholars or of Jews generally who had lived in the country for any length of time. Only the very recent Polish Jewish immigrants had been expelled. Like that would make it any better, Roscoe. It's important that we remember that these weren't shadowy fringe cells whispering in basements. They wore matching shirts, ran for office, and filled arenas. Some of them had tenure. And speaking of basements.
Not that I don't trust you, Blazkowicz, but there's nothing saying you couldn't be wearing a mask made to look like William J. Blazkowicz to hide your alien space lizard facial traits. So, how many of the password that Grace gave you?
She didn't give me one.
Right.
The All-American Diner in Roswell was owned by Super Spesh's father and has a tunnel leading straight into Area 52, something that makes it a perfect rendezvous point. It has a secret basement full of complex diagrams and conspiracy boards. Spesh and his dad were UFO hunters. For years, he's been working on a theory that Area 52 is hiding alien technology. BJ immediately recognizes the tech Spesh is talking about. Set Roth told him all about it during the mission briefing. Area 52 was, in fact, a dat you should safekeep. When the war began, they gave it to the US government, hoping their inventions would help in the war. Instead, when the US surrendered, it all just got handed over to the Nazis. Expanding Dat Yeshud's mythos is welcome to the world building, but feels a little bit like a retcon. We find memos and diaries explaining that it's not a Jewish secret society, no, not like the first game implied with its Hebrew and Stars of David. Instead, anyone can join, so long as they have a curious mind. I like it as a direction for them, but it does feel like Machine Games panicked after it sparked controversy in the New Order. Giving them Area 52 is inspiring, literally. When I first played the game, my mind ran with all the weird and wonderful things that the US government might have hidden under Roswell. Unfortunately, when BJ finally arrives, it feels like an underdeveloped missed opportunity. There's nothing weird here, no special toys. It's just another Nazi facility. That's something that carries elsewhere when it comes to the new Colossus. While there's plenty of variety when it comes to the context of combat, something we'll talk about later, it feels like the game doesn't take advantage of its American setting. We fight through a wasteland, a Nazi bunker, a flooded ghetto, a farm, and a hovercraft. Roswell is the most American the game's settings ever feel. The DLC eventually takes us to Hollywood, but I'd have liked to see that fleshed out in BJ's campaign. The Nazis have carved Hitler into Mount Rushmore. What does that look like? What became of the Vegas Strip? I don't need BJ to go on a road trip, but I wish Roswell's emphasis on Americana returned more often. The promise of the new Colossus was that we get to liberate a Nazified America, but all we see is a Nazified street and a brief glimpse at Washington. BJ's mission is all for nothing. We plant our nuke, but the Oberkommando escape Area 52 in a rocket and fly into space. The Nazis have expanded since conquering the moon. They're fleeing to Venus. We better follow, but first, BJ makes a detour. So we will as well. It goes on. The internecine hate. Perhaps the seeds are there in that. They will eat one another at last and leave the rest of us here and there in the world still alive. Still enough of us once more to build and hope and make a few simple plans. There's a temptation with Rip Blazkowicz to file him under bigot and move on, a nasty old racist who got what was coming to him, a cartoonish monster. But that is letting him off easy, and it misses what the game is actually showing us. Rip isn't a true believer who found the Nazis and fell in love. Rip is a businessman. He married Zofia for her father's money and ran his business into the ground anyway. When the Reich rolled into Texas, he seized an opportunity to balance the books. He sold his wife and friends and got a 2,000-acre ranch for it. Rip is where the game spits its theme at the player. Not all Nazis are German. Some of them were just waiting for an excuse. BJ's home is just a few miles from Roswell, so he stops in on the way back to HQ. Something is waiting for him here. A slow burn walk down memory lane where the pacing crawls so you can feel the tension. There's a long documented history of America producing men just like Rip. He's far from unique to this game. His hate is capital first. It all comes back to property and hypocrisy. I've already flagged how, long before a single swastika flew over the US, it had already perfected the art of hate. But specifically, it learned there was money to be made in turning human beings into line items. When the Nazis came looking for partners, plenty of American businesses were happy to shake hands. But first, let's meet Dad for real.
It's kill or be killed. The old and the weak are doomed. All manners of scum and sickly minds and dirty bodies and cockroaches doing everything in their power to rob the white man of what he's earned.
Rip's parenting philosophy fits on an index card. The old and the weak are doomed. Life is predator and prey. If you want to survive, you better be the former. When he was a boy, BJ was forced by his father to shoot their dog, Bessie. It's how the game opens, an interactive flashback where we're beaten, threatened, and a shotgun is forced into our hands. You can shoot the dog, but if you aim off to the left or right, BJ will miss. If that happens, Rick smacks him and finishes the job himself. He's disgusted at his son's weakness, turns it into a teaching moment. What he teaches is more specific than be tough. He's teaching that a living thing can be converted. Bessie is transformed from companion into lesson. She stops being a dog the moment she becomes useful as a demonstration. That's the thing Rip believes in his bones and is desperate to pass on. Anything can be an asset if you're willing to sell your soul. It's no wonder he's found a home here. In his book, The Half Has Never Been Told, Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism, Edward Baptist documents the slave asset bubble. By the 1830s, Southern banks regularly accepted enslaved people as mortgage collateral. You could borrow money against a human being. Somehow it gets worse from there. Bankers realized they could take those mortgages, bundle them up, and turn them into bonds, sold to investors. Yes, you could own a slice of a human being's stolen labor without ever having to see their face. When we hear about the slave trade, we think of plantation houses and cotton picking, 12 years of slave stuff. But the banality of it, the institutional foundations of it, are every bit as chilling. At every step of this process, the human being gets further away and the profit gets closer. Baptist writes, the 3.2 million enslaved in the United States had a market value of $1.3 billion in 1850. 1/5 of the nation's wealth and almost equal to the entire gross national product. They were more liquid than other forms of American property, even if an acre of land couldn't run away or kill an overseer with an axe. This is the machine that Rip became a part of when he emigrated, a country that had already built an entire financial architecture on the principle that a person is an asset, and an asset is only worth what you can extract before you dispose of it. Rip pointing a rifle at Bessie and calling it a lesson is just that principle, scaled down to a kitchen table.
Save him, Billy! He's drowning!
It's just a rat. He's gross.
Carrying on from the New Order's claim that Nazis aren't born, they're made, we see that BJ started to internalize a lot of his father's beliefs. He doesn't quite understand the world Rip is describing to him, but he does understand rats. When he was a child, he was taught that they were vermin. They stole from his family, his people. He trapped one and drowned it, and it made his friend Billy cry. Years later, he finds a rat aboard Eva's hammer and frees it from a trap. He's learned his lesson. Billy was a black girl that was sweet on him, and even though BJ's father beat him for it, he continued to be her friend. Not because he disagreed, BJ wasn't politically minded like that, but because he simply didn't understand what his father was saying. Zofia was able to shelter him from the full meaning of Rip's words, even if those words were instinctive. When the Nazis came to power, they didn't have to import that instinct into American business. It was already there, and some of the US's biggest companies were thrilled to do the deal. We can find a letter where a woman talks about how her boss had always supported and done business with the Nazis, even before they won the war. Those people have always existed. Let's start with the big fish, because I'm going to get comments on them if I don't. America's General Motors owned Opel, Germany's largest car maker. Ford owned Ford Werk in Cologne. Between them, these two American giants built most of the trucks that carried the Wehrmacht across Europe. In fact, they rolled into Poland on the 1st of September 1939. Some shareholders objected to this, and General Motors chairman Alfred replied that, quote, "Such matters should not be considered the business of the management of General Motors. The persecution, the rearmament, the invasion, not our business." No, the business of General Motors is money, even if it's covered in blood. Then there's Henry Ford, whose German subsidiary built the trucks and used slave labor to do it. Ford, as a company, held on to its majority stake in that manufacturing the entire war, and collected on the enriched plant afterward. He also, incidentally, spent the 1920s publishing a 4-volume anti-Semitic doorstop called The International Jew. People who complain about video essay length wouldn't have lasted a minute in the early 1900s. It crossed the Atlantic and lodged in the brain of an aspiring Austrian painter who kept a life-size portrait of Ford beside his desk and name-checked him admiringly in Mein Kampf. In 1938, Austria was annexed, the Nuremberg laws were in full swing, and the Rhineland was remilitarized. To that backdrop, Ford visited Germany and let the Reich pin its highest honor for a foreigner to his chest. Henry Ford was a monster for a bunch of reasons. He was an anti-Semitic, ruthless businessman with a goon squad that would terrorize his workers. But he also claimed to be a pacifist who hated war and threw his factories behind the American war effort. He lit a fire and then backed away from it, likely to save his own ass. Whether or not he was a Nazi sympathizer and whether or not he still was during the war is hotly contested, but one thing is without a doubt, he profited, same as Rip Blaskovich.
Son, I have tried reasoning with you. I've tried smacking sense into you till the cows come home, and nothing is working.
BJ had nightmares about something living in the basement. It woke Rip repeatedly, so he declared that enough was enough and found a cure. Comfort? No. A hug? Overrated. He dragged his son down to the basement, put a weapon in his hands, and taught him to kill the thing in the dark. It's where the soldier was born. Rip built a monster killer in that basement, drilled it into him young. The world is full of things that want to hurt you, and a real man puts them down without flinching. I've seen takes that this is a humanizing moment for Rip, and I can't disagree more. Rip does this for himself, not for BJ. His son's crying keeps waking him up. It's also here explicitly to show Rip's hypocrisy, and that hypocrisy is so important for where he stands in Wolfenstein's America. When the monster comes, you shoot it between the eyes. Well, they came, and he didn't reach for a weapon, he reached for a pen. The Nazis were future business partners. He'd already squeezed Zofia and her family for all they were worth. Rip Blaskovich is the game's ultimate point and its ugliest joke. He's the America we've talked about all video. Hypocrisy personified, sanded down to the bone, stripped of the romanticism. He, just like countless examples that we've run through, counteracts the Statue of Liberty's new Colossus. He's a second-generation immigrant who spent his life trying to pull the ladder up behind him. He's a man who subjugated others while whining that he was subjugated himself. Once, that terrified BJ, but he's all grown up now, and he sees Rip and the basement for what they always were.
You're on the wrong side, buddy. All them years, I was banging my head into the wall, coming to see that everyone was against me. And when the Nazis took over, things got a lot better.
The farm is so derelict that it's a surprise to see Rip here. BJ eventually finds him on the second floor of this dead, discarded house. He knew he'd come, heard Terror Billy was rampaging on the radio, and wanted to head us off. BJ's not looking to settle a score. He's simply here to find his mother's engagement ring. He wants to propose to Anya. Wolfenstein believes, genuinely, that people can be unmade. The New Order gave us this in Klaus. Sigrun awkwardly fills that role here. But Rip Blazkowicz is where the game reaches its limit. Rip's an unequivocal monster. He beat his son, shot his dog, sold his wife and friends to the Nazis, and underpinning all of that is the fact that he's a coward. When BJ confronts him, he doesn't even have the balls to confess he sold Zofia out. BJ has to press him. Even here, at the very end, with nothing left to gain, the instinct is automatic. There is a person in front of me, and there is an angle to be worked. Rip tries to sell his own child back to the Nazis. He had every chance to reform. That's nobody's responsibility but his. He wasn't born in a Reich, he was an American who chose this, every day, for money and spite. The Nazi business rewards people like him. It's surprising that he hasn't run his new farm into the ground the same way he destroyed his old one. The reason for that is unspoken but certain. It's easy to run a business when your employees are part of the collateral. It's probably built on slaves. He doesn't want to be saved, so BJ doesn't try. He takes the hatchet and buries it in the old man's chest. We hit the button, but the moment is handed over to a cutscene. This is BJ's retribution, not ours. He'll be in the grave, rotting away, and still a better daddy than Rip. The kill is personal, returning to BJ's small American dream that focuses on family. Political differences? Unimportant. Cooperation with the Nazis? Barely an excuse. BJ kills Rip because he stuck a gun in his face, and because he killed his mum. It's small comfort when Frau Engel arrives and captures him.
Would you like to kiss the bride now? But not before the wedding.
Listen, Joe said. I'm not an intellectual. Fascism has no need of that. What is wanted is the deed. Theory derives from action. You never find a true fascist talking, only doing. It's fun to kill Nazis. More than any other bad guy, more than orcs or zombies or fucking demons from hell, there's an intrinsic satisfaction to killing Nazis in video games. Christ, there was a period where we all thought it was overdone, and yet it's endured. Why that's embedded itself so cleanly in the zeitgeist is worth a video all by itself, but when you reach the end of a long and winding road, I think there are 3 potential reasons for this. Number 1, after World War II, Western entertainment was dominated by stories where Nazis were an obstacle to overcome, and it dominoed from there. Number 2, it's easy and comforting for groups of people to rally around a common enemy. It's why populism thrives on identifying an other to rail against. Everyone knows about the Holocaust, it's taught in schools. They will remain a common enemy that is continuously referenced until something else comes along that outpaces them. There are plenty of contenders. Until then, the domino effect will continue. Number 3. The only good Nazi is a dead one. They are a moral question that history answered. Wolfenstein offers a 4th, glib reason. Satisfying combat and loathsome characterization. We'll talk about the former in a minute. The latter has just arrived.
Open your mouth. Open.
Frau Engel got her wish. Terror Billy captured alive. She strips him of his power suit, steals his engagement ring, and hauls him off to Washington, D.C. This is all going to be broadcast. The announcement, the show trial, and the execution. Thankfully, the Resistance has our back. Super Spesh arrives undercover as our lawyer with a full multi-staged plan. It was a trick by Engel. She's playing with her food. Engel might be German, but on the whole, Wolfenstein points you squarely at the regime and the ideology, not at Germany. It's why we don't fight the Japanese. The game's lore says the Nazis betrayed them, so we don't need to think about it, something that separates Wolfie from High Castle. Nations don't matter, Nazi killing does, and it doesn't matter what language a Nazi speaks, they are still a Nazi. They still shout about race souls and poisoned blood and birth rates and wield pseudosigns to exterminate groups of people. Grace said a tumor has grown inside America's body. The new Colossus lets us cut it out with a hatchet. The gratuitous violence is half the battle. BJ doesn't have a knife anymore, he has a hatchet. A grislier, more brutal tool that brings grislier, more brutal animations that are impressively choreographed. The Nazis themselves are the other half. Wander a level and you'll catch 2 of them grumbling about the terrorist who's killed hundreds, no, thousands of their own. They're outraged, genuinely offended that someone would go around enacting violence on people they disagree with. Smash cut to them talking about how excited they are to join a death squad, and you're encouraged to revel in the violence. It's comedy. Bleak comedy, but still comedy. The Nazis indict themselves and then bend their necks for BJ's tool. Blood stains the arms of our power armor so they're eternally tinged red. Ritva, a member of the Kreisau Circle, tells BJ her preferred method with a grin. Knife in the side, just above the pelvis, then twist. It's both background flavor and the whole pitch of combat in one sentence. The game isn't squeamish about the joy of it, and through reinforcement and video gameisms, neither are we. Business is good, remember? A variety of contexts return to keep things exciting, fresh, and spicy. Heavy weapons have been expanded, so there's more variety in what tools and toys get dropped in the middle of a fight. Battling on Venus, running from coolant station to coolant station so the planet's atmosphere doesn't cook us. Conveyor belt shooting, fighting across a moving rocket train, riding a Panzerhunden through the streets of New Orleans, burning Nazis to a crisp. However, the way fights are handled feels less purposeful than the New Orders. For a start, there are no boss fights unless you count the tidal wave of mechs at the end of the game. The New Order's London Monitor was crap, but it was at least a change of pace. The heavy robot that attacked us in the Nautica was a unique encounter that relied on tactically placed turrets and charging stations. Drones were used sparingly. The new Colossus has a wider bestiary of foes, but that doesn't necessarily translate to combat variety. Nazi dogs, Nazi robots, Nazi cyborgs, Nazi drones, Nazi gators, okay, that one's a stretch. Death's Head might be dead, but he'd be proud of what the Reich did to his monsters. They've been expanded for sure, but now they're poured indiscriminately, and that makes some encounters bleed into each other. At points, you might end up fighting practically everything in one room. The Uber-Soldat, humanoid robots that are insanely quick and can stick to walls, are very cool, placed as a jump scare when we first encounter them in Area 52. But by the second half of the game, they basically replace typical Nazis in some arenas, so they stop feeling special and start feeling overwhelming. Right here, as BJ is tried in court, we see that best.
For gruesome murders that number in the thousands, you have been found guilty, Mr. William Joseph Blazkowicz.
From the perspective of pure spectacle, BJ's arrest is the highlight of the game. It's a rollercoaster of tension and emotion, taking us from a battle in the farmhouse hundreds of miles in the air to a wild conclusion that jumps the shark. It's also soured by a bizarre spike in difficulty that highlights the game's balancing issues elsewhere. The new Colossus is a hard game, and sometimes that difficulty can feel unfair. Here, BJ breaks out of his shackles and starts to rampage through the courthouse. Kill everything is our mission, and there are waves of Nazis to shoot in the face. Almost every enemy type is deployed, and the first half of the arena forces us to cobble together ammo and weapons from scratch. All of our cool, upgraded stuff was taken when Engel arrested us. Cover is made of wood, so barely matters, and there's nowhere to hide because of the shape of the room. This is all purposeful. It's an against all odds moment, BJ breaking free by himself. That only works if the odds in question are stacked against us. I could forgive the difficulty of the courthouse if it wasn't an issue everywhere else. The biggest shift to this game's combat is how it handles health. BJ metamorphizes across the game, from wheelchair to power armor to a brand new body altogether. That is reflected mechanically. In the power armor, he has only 50 HP but can carry 200 armor without overcharging. In the new body, that eventually balances out to be 100 HP and 100 armor. The thing is, armor isn't balanced appropriately. It just reduces how much HP you lose when you take a hit. It doesn't remove it altogether, so 50 HP is still 50 HP. That means that despite the cool stomping attack that comes with it, the Dat-You-Should suit that the story is hyped up feels like a tin can when BJ finally dons it. Caroline wore it better. Because combat arenas are so overstuffed with elite enemies, BJ's small health pool is more obvious. You're trying to get behind a super soldier to shoot it in the back, but he's got 2 or 3 identical pals frying you with a laser that you can do nothing about. And BJ ain't the tank he once was. "Oh boo-hoo, game too hard, go cry to your mum about it," you yell, and to that I say, fine! I will cry to my mum about it.
It felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest when you left. But all hardship is temporary. Do you know this?
The courthouse rampage was a fantasy. At the end of a long line of dead Nazis waits a dream of Zofia, here to comfort BJ in his time of need. In seeing her, he finally accepts his fate, and his heart breaks as he realizes that he wasn't as ready to die as he previously thought. But you stay here, BJ, I'm not done talking about the combat. The New Order was sold on the dream of dual wielding, 2 automatic shotguns, arm in arm, rhythmically blasting Nazis into paste. The new Colossus takes that a step further, letting us dual wield alternate weapons for some very silly and very fun blasting. Senior game designer Arcade Berg told the 6-Axis, "We have what we call the 3 playstyles. You have the stealth player who is about killing unnoticed. We have the typical player who's probably wielding one weapon, headshotting, making it to vantage points, using cover and being smart and surgical in their approach. And then we have the mayhem player who's dual wielding shotguns and doing the dance of death." We're going to talk about Wolfenstein Stealth later. The headline is that it's not very good, but I do love the fact that it informed alternate dual wielding. A silenced handgun in one hand and a shotgun in the other, ready for when things inevitably go loud. The new Colossus brings over almost all of the same weapons from the New Order, with some notable changes. The first is that the lasercraft work is relegated to just one timeline, Fergus's. It was our best friend in the last game, and now only half of players will get to be reunited with it. Wyatt gives us the much cooler diesel craft work. It shoots mines or rockets depending on your preference, and by far the most satisfying tool in Billy's arsenal. Nothing beats hip-firing 20 mines and then watching a room explode as you activate them. The new Colossus was built on a new engine, and thankfully its big booms are bigger and boomier than its predecessors. Later, we'll get the Ubergaver, a wonder weapon that, to quote the wiki, draws energy from microportals of extra-dimensional origin. It basically shoots mini black holes, vaporizing anything in its way. This is a contextual weapon, only available on Venus and the Ausmörser, but it's a welcome new toy in the game's final third. I'm still salty it wasn't in Area 52 to make the level feel weird and special though. Weapon upgrades are handled differently, emphasizing player choice. Now you find upgrade kits to let you choose which weapon to customize and how you want to customize it. They change the look, something that always makes weapon upgrades feel tactile and meaningful regardless of what the upgrade is, and if you build them right, you can basically turn some of these into brand new weapons. The assault rifle, for example, can be transformed into a mid-range sniper. Grenades can evolve from basic everyday bombs that your granddad would recognize to tiny balls of hell that unleash fire, electricity, and shrapnel in a oneer. The 3 playstyles that Arcade Berg described are reflected in the perks that BJ can hone. Stealth, Mayhem, and Tactical trees have corresponding perks that can be upgraded 5 times if you fulfill the requirements. And it's here, if you take the time to invest in them, that you'll overcome the difficulty curve. Cool, unique perks like Vampire that let takedowns heal you are sadly gone, but heavy weapons can have their maximum ammo doubled by the time you're done. The most useful from this point on is how enemy laser weapons can be rendered almost useless if you stun enough robots. None of this helps BJ when Engel gets hold of him.
We would have been so good together. Darling, you're breaking my heart.
The old and the weak are doomed.
It takes Irene Engel 3 swings to behead BJ. She might have finally killed us, but at least we made her work for it. He dies in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Swastikas fly over the reflecting pool as she tosses our head into a chasm below. The courthouse rampage was a fantasy that we should have seen through before Zofia arrived. Perhaps that's why it was so difficult to throw us off the scent. The first hint is that if we don't try to break out, the Nazis wait forever for BJ to seize his moment. There's no fail state. The second is that BJ magically summons his hatchet despite being restrained. The third, and most damning hint, is that suddenly he can walk without his power armor. All of this could be waved away by even the most cynical player. This is Wolfenstein. BJ is made of steel. Finding the resolve to break free and regain control of his body is downright sensible compared to where the game goes next. But while it's somehow the stupidest thing Wolfenstein has ever done, it's hard not to have a big, dumb grin on my face. At least for a few minutes.
He's awake.
Aye, look at that German bastard! The only person on the planet hard enough to survive getting his head chopped off! Mr. Blazkowicz, can you hear me?
The gang intercepts BJ's head as it falls. Using Datisha technology, they preserve his brain, keep him alive, and attach BJ Blazkowicz to a brand new super soldier body that Caroline found years ago. Even in death, she's watching over us. It's why Shoshana the monkey cat was here. Set's mad experiments have paid off. However, what it does to the game's theme is a real shame. BJ is no longer carried by the Kreisau circle. That blood transfusion from the beginning wasn't permanent. It only bought him time until he could be slapped onto the body of a Nazi. Just like the U-boat, just like our arsenal of weapons, just like the nukes. We're using the tools of the enemy against them, and there is something to that, but I liked it more when I thought BJ was just too angry to die. Let's give him some time to recover and a look at the DLC. They know a million tricks, those novelists. Take Dr. Goebbels, that's how he started out. Writing fiction appeals to the base lusts that hide in everyone, no matter how respectable on the surface. Yes, the novelist knows humanity, how worthless they are, ruled by their testicles, swayed by cowardice, selling out every cause because of their greed. All he's got to do is thump on the drum, and there's his response. And he's laughing, of course, behind his hand at the effect he gets. A movement lives or dies on its messaging. The art, the words, the music and lyrics. It's why Wolfenstein's Nazis have co-opted so much popular music, and it's why the real Nazis crack down so hard on art and culture. The Kreisau Circle will eventually recruit Curtis Everton, writer of the Freedom Chronicles. These are short, playable serials that tell the fictional stories of freedom fighters across America, sticking it to the Nazis. They're fun, they're fine, they're pretty cool, they're pretty slapdash. The quality really varies here, but what they are perfectly silly, so a great chance to step away from dark, real-life ideologies and have a cleanse. We get 3 short stories focusing on a football player, a secret agent, and an old soldier who gets dragged back into the fight. He's gonna rough up some Nazis, he's a son of a...
Wait. He might still be of use to the Reich. In parts, that is. Enough!
Episode 1, The Adventures of Gunslinger Joe, follows a football player called Joseph Stallion, forced to serve under the Reich. He once played American football, but the Nazis got rid of all the fun sports and only kept the boring ones. Well, except for baseball, that was never fun. One day, he rebels, and an American Nazi commander, Metze, imprisons him. Metze is fascinated by Joe's physique. He is an Untermensch, a subhuman, a label the Nazis give him because he's black, despite the fact he's the best football player in the US. Metze is baffled by this. How can a black guy be good at something? Well, he must be a space alien, so to find out, he locks Joe away in a prison and plans to cut him open. The Freedom Chronicles can feel a little cheap. The environments are just reused levels from BJ's campaign. Alaska is just the factory New Orleans that we'll soon visit. A game show studio is just the courthouse that BJ blasts through. The prison where Joe breaks out is effectively Area 52, and he even, eventually, ends up on Venus, another location taken straight from the main game. Chicago, Illinois, where we are right now, is laid out identically to Roswell. There are no unique enemies, no special new guns. The only new thing here is the ability to throw cans, something specific to Gunslinger Joe. That mechanic feels like a bit of a joke though. He's the only character of the 3 that doesn't get a silencer for his weapons, and isn't characterized as a particularly stealthy person. In fact, he's pretty pissed off, for good reason. See, Commander Metze is what drives the action in Episode 1. He's a good old-fashioned racist, grandson of a slave owner, member of the KKK, an American football player who played for the Nazis, a military man who captures Joe's father to use as bait, and a big old conspiracy nut. He's a God-fearing man who believes in aliens. That's a lot of screws to rattle around his tin, and it paints him as sincerely unhinged whenever he shows up. He keeps calling Joe a slave. He mispronounces Reich, calling it the Reich, a pretty funny joke that shows he might be a Nazi, but he doesn't fully understand the regime he's subscribed to. His men don't respect him because he's working on insane projects that are too crazy, even for the Nazis. That is surprising for 2 reasons. The first is that, as viewers of my New Order video will know, some Nazis thought that Aryans came from the moon. And the other reason is Metze's biggest project is grounded in real life. He's trying to make a satellite laser gun that will burn cities to the ground. A Sonengewer. Nazi scientists were exploring this, with a theory dating right back to the 1920s. Metze is leading that project when Joe finally confronts him.
The Sonengewehr? Oh, that's not operational yet. Are those your final words, slave?
What sets the Freedom Chronicles apart is the art style it uses instead of traditional cutscenes. It's beautiful. It's the main way our story within a story framing carries, and without it, the Freedom Chronicles would be charmless. It evokes old G.I. Joe and Action Man comics. Blocky colours set up simple backdrops for gorgeous, detailed faces. Similar to how the Old Blood gave us a story told entirely from BJ's perspective to remove the need for cutscenes, these are here to cut costs, but they're too damn pretty to make me care. However, there's something smarter going on than cost cutting. These stories are resistance propaganda, designed to stir up ordinary Americans and get them fighting. What does good propaganda look like? Bold, simple, iconic, larger-than-life heroes, striking poses, and punchy comic panels. The comic book style isn't just a pretty way to dodge a cutscene budget, it's exactly the aesthetic that these stories would use, because selling a hero is the entire point of them. A quarterback, a secret agent, a grizzled soldier, rendered just like the cover of a dime store comic, because that's what makes a legend spread. Just ask Captain America. That means that the Resistance and the Reich are doing the same thing. The Nazis have Blitzmensch, their propaganda Superman. The Resistance has the Freedom Chronicles. Both weaponize the comic book hero, one to keep people in line, and the other to rouse them out of it.
OSA secret agent Jack Valiant. Super spy for the British Empire. The Queen's greatest asset. Except for one other. Agent Silent Death.
Agent Silent Death is the DLC's highlight. Her story is threadbare, but that means her gameplay isn't interrupted for scripted moments. Back in 1946, Jessica Valiant and her husband Jack were OSA agents, a neat callback to BJ's origins. Jack was murdered by Nazis and Jessica went into hiding. Years later, she gets a mysterious letter detailing the whereabouts of the 3 men who killed her husband. Uber Commander Hans, the torturer, Nazi collaborator Chuck Lorentz, the traitor, and General Dunkel, the murderer. Jessica's adventure takes her from Gestapo HQ in California to Hollywood, and finally to the moon. And while the reused assets pop up here too, the moon feels less like the New Order space station and more like this game's Venus, the levels all feel unique because they cater specifically to Jessica's abilities. In the main campaign, BJ eventually gets to choose an enhancement for his new body. The Freedom Chronicles sprinkles them among the cast. The ramshackles are given to Joe. It lets you smash through vents and sprint through Nazis, sometimes turning them to powder. The Battle Walker are stilts that raise you up high, giving access to elevated areas and vantage points. That is given to Captain Wilkins. The Constrictor harness is Agent Silent Death's. They let you compress your body to squeeze through increasingly ridiculous tight gaps. Doing this lets each hero feel different. Joe's a smasher, Jessica's a sneaker, Wilkins is there. But Agent Silent Death stands out specifically because her missions are designed for stealth. She's fragile, so if you get caught in a firefight, you're screwed. But her episodes don't just disincentivize combat, they incentivize stealth. She can slit Nazi heels from those tight spaces. Each of her episodes is set in one location with maze-like level design that encourages thinking creatively. A vent will let you get up to the 2nd floor of Gestapo HQ, or you can simply sneak your way up the stairs, killing Nazis as you go. When Jessica finally cuts down her husband's killers, her reward is a call to arms. It's never revealed who sent her the mysterious letter, all we have is the Crimson Bulldog on the envelope. Jessica, just like Joe and Wilkins, is left with a minor cliffhanger that teases there will be more adventures to come. It lends to the comic book aesthetic, and the writing complements that.
I'd been on my own for most of the 50s. Then someone got me a message. Ordered me back home, to Alaska, to stop Black Sun.
Like many great comic books, the Freedom Chronicles are soapy and insular. Captain Gerald Wilkins, a US soldier brought out of hiding to stop something called the Black Sun, is the soapiest of them all. The Black Sun in question is the Sonnengewehr, the satellite laser that gunslinger Joe learned about. It ties episode 1 and 3 together in a really cute way, like if Spider-Man found the Tesseract. Just like Agent Silent Death, Wilkins has been in hiding for 20 years. One day, his old friend, Clive Cross, and a mysterious 20-year-old woman called Ginny bring him back into the fight. Ginny is secretly Wilkins' daughter, and that is where the fun lies. The Freedom Chronicles suffers from the same problem Alan Wake's American Nightmare did in 2012. Both are pitched as pulpy, cheesy trash, and both end up feeling like pulpy, cheesy trash. The writing is laced with bad puns, cliches, and tropes. Characters quip to themselves, they don't speak poetically like BJ Blazkowicz does. Jessica mutters that Agent Silent Death would not go quietly into the night. It's a line that shows how self-aware these comic book heroes are, lending to the pulp. For Wilkins, the story he's slotted into is where that self-awareness thrives, coated in tropes.
Sit tight, I'll be right there.
I'm a spy, you dolt. I've always been part of the German Empire. Clive Cross isn't my real name. I stole these dog tags from some Untermensch's corpse.
What Captain Wilkins has over the other episodes is an honest-to-God twist. Clive Cross is revealed to be a Nazi spy, the Owl. It's the most compelling story beat in the DLC, and unfortunately it's revealed and dealt with in the space of 20 minutes. It's soapy, it's personal, and it adds some much-needed intimacy to Wilkins as a character. Clive was his best friend, and for years, that friendship was exploited for the Nazis' gain. Just like American Nightmare all those years ago, how much does this focus on kitsch justify the quality? It might be pulpy cheesy trash on purpose, but I have still paid £15 to play pulpy cheesy trash full of reused assets and no new gameplay ideas. Also like American Nightmare, in many ways the Freedom Chronicles doesn't go far enough. The hope was that the occult would take center stage again, so that it would feel different to the machine of the new Colossus. The Old Blood benefited massively from that, and the DLC hints to it by naming a Nazi operation after the Black Sun. Gameplay sequences are all ripped right out of BJ's adventure, riding a Panzerhunden, shooting Nazis in an American street. I'm not alone in feeling that way. The Freedom Chronicles did not review well, being seen as a bit of a wet fart that wallowed in the lows of the new Colossus rather than playing with its highs. Riley McLeod on Kotaku wrote, Wolfenstein's combat is mobile and fun, and while Deeds doesn't need to bring anything new to the table, I couldn't help but want something a bit more dramatic to close out the DLC. You get to fire a big gun at one point, but it's brief and underwhelming. Wilkins is BJ Blazkowicz without the poetry. The joy comes from his relationship with his daughter. The pair chat on comms, planning missions and routes through Nazi-infested facilities. He rasps on about how much he likes killing the enemy and she's weirded out by his bloodlust, disappointed that the father she's been searching for is just a Nazi-killing maniac. BJ would be proud, but Wilkins also shows us the game we could have gotten if the writing of the main campaign wasn't so warm and curious. Tropes are an integral part of propaganda because they let the audience imprint on the heroes and see their enemies as others. In the end, Wilkins stops the Black Sun from being fired, defeats his old, traitorous friend, and sets off with Ginny planning to join the resistance. It's a note all 3 episodes end on. Joel kills Metza and vows to keep fighting. Jessica gets her call to arms. Wilkins finds his daughter and points her at the next war. 3 stories, 3 cliffhangers, all resolving in the same promise. The fight goes on. Propaganda recruits. Every chronicle closes the same way the poster on the recruitment office wall does. Your heroes are still out there, the enemy is still standing, and there is a place in the story for you. It's an invitation. So, as we return to BJ Blazkowicz, let's extend that invitation to some new friends. There is evil, Tagomi thought. It's actual, like cement. I can't believe it. I can't stand it. Evil is not a view. It's an ingredient in us, in the world, poured over us, filtering into our bodies, minds, hearts, into the pavement itself. We cannot enter the monstrous, schizophrenic morass of Nazi internecine intrigue, Our minds cannot adapt. So, Wolfenstein 2's level design is crap, right? There's plenty to argue over in this video, but can we all agree on that before I move on? It scraps the good ideas from the New Order and then waves lazily at player choice and mechanical freedom in the back half, without ever truly committing to it.
Grace! Grace!
This motherfucker, don't wait, Abby, or I'll break your idiot neck.
I got you the New Orleans dossier.
I'm sorry. It's just that it took me hours to put her down.
No rest for the wicked. With his new body ready to go, BJ is soon deployed back into the fight. A resistance group waits for us in New Orleans, which means we can see how the world reacts to our new toys. The stilts are cool and silly, but they're the mascot for janky movement that's carried over from the New Order. The point of them is you can reach high places. Oh, but not that high place. Not that high place either. Don't even think about climbing up to that high place. Once again, the objects that BJ can vault or clamber over are inconsistent. Some chest-high walls are fair game, some aren't. Some railings are good to go, some aren't. These were rough edges that the New Order needed to sand down, but it feels like the new Colossus doesn't even try. Instead, it's busy sanding off a lot of its predecessor's cool bits. The laser Kraftwerk doesn't shoot a consistent laser that cuts holes in fences or chains now. It is purely for Nazi killing, a necessity because it's relegated to just one timeline. Can't build your levels around a tool that only half of players will see. That means there aren't optional vents you can open up to sneak through anymore, meaning the interactivity of a space has been limited. The New Order had a similar situation with hot wiring and lockpicking. One was given to Fergus and the other was given to Wyatt, but the levels embraced that rather than discarded it. Locked rooms had armor upgrades, digital safes had health pickups. Now, because Wolfenstein rearranges BJ's health bar so much, there are no health or armor upgrades to find, meaning there's less reason to give us these two tools to facilitate exploration. I think machine games could have had their cake and ate it too though. If the laser Kraftwerk was just in one timeline, all you would have to do is give the diesel Kraftwerk a utility that helped with exploration. Maybe the laser could cut fences, but the diesel could melt metal. Health and armor upgrades could still be in the world, but they would be bolted onto BJ's new health pool when he changes to a new body. His super soldier body has 100 HP, but if you found 2 health upgrades, maybe you'd start at 120. Little optional puzzles, like the levers at Death's Head's compound or the safe in Camp Bellica, are now gone completely. No weird secret rooms behind bookshelves that hide lore, gold, or enigma codes. All of these are simply strewn around the main path of a level now. When we arrive in New Orleans, alternative paths are given to us depending on which body enhancement BJ chose, but those paths are completely meaningless. At one point, in the sewer of New Orleans, I found a room that could only be accessed by smashing into it with the ramshackles. Inside was some armor and some bullets. There was nothing special that made it feel unique to my choice. No cool weapon upgrade or even some gold. Going off the beaten path was a waste of time. As you push through a level, you'll often be faced with 3 obvious paths. A high place for the stilts, a door to smash with the ramshackles, or a vent to sneak through with the constrictor. Because we're relegated to just one choice, in this case the ramshackles, it doesn't feel like the level design is giving me options, it's just asking me to match my one available tool to the one available path of least resistance. And this design philosophy specifically deflates stealth.
Hey, little fella. What are you doing here? It's dangerous here. You have to be so quiet. We gotta go.
New Orleans is a ghetto built by the Nazis. A humongous wall has hemmed in freedom fighters and undesirables, and when we arrive, the Reich has decided to exterminate everyone inside. That means it's bubbling with Nazis. What's the collective noun for Nazis? A jackboot of Nazis? A goose step? We'll come back to it. This tantrum of Nazis means stealth feels like the best way through. It's a trick the game regularly employs. A hive of bad guys between you and your objectives, so the odds feel stacked and you're inclined to sneak by them. However, the body enhancement that you picked now determines how a combat arena will play out. Take the nuclear bunker in Manhattan. I have 3 options for how to enter an arena: sneaking under a train, jumping up to a balcony, or smashing through a wall. Because I picked the ramshackles, all I could do was smash through that wall and alert the guards. Stealth is immediately not an option. You could argue that that's on me for the choice that I picked, but the level design limits my options now because of what I chose. Just because I want to ram Nazis when things go loud doesn't mean I no longer want to sneak around. The Constrictor is a very cool, very weird upgrade that can shove BJ's massive body into tiny holes like jelly. However, it's not what the stealth system needed. We don't need more places to skulk, we need more reactive bad guys and more options to mess with enemy AI. The new Colossus comes along and cuts places to skulk, like vents, and doesn't toss any ideas onto the whiteboard for messing with Nazis. It's the worst thing a sequel can be, a mechanical regression. Arcade Berg told Game Watcher, "We're really pushing our stealth, tactical mayhem dynamic further, and the player needs space to do that, like to get to a more tactical position or take a more silent route. It does not feel like you're given space to do that. On the rare occasions where you can creep through vents before a fight, you can't shoot through vent openings to kill soldiers. It wouldn't matter if you could mind, because just like in the New Order, Nazis can see BJ through tiny gaps in cover. Alarm boxes are now strewn around a level. If you destroy all of them, a commander can't call for backup, even if you're spotted. It's lovely that these are here, a carryover from 2001's return to Castle Wolfenstein, but there are so many of the damn things in one zone that it's easier to just go for the commander. Despite repeated attempts and 4 playthroughs since release, I was never able to destroy all of them without being spotted. This is all mainly because of the level design. Arenas are so overstuffed, so there's too much opposition between us and a commander. Sometimes, like here on Venus, there are no blind spots, so you're forced to go loud. Drones make stealth especially frustrating, as their movements are erratic, you can't stealth kill them, and readability is a problem because of how they look. It's impossible to tell if their sightline stretches to you. This might be a problem for me, but none of it is a problem for BJ. He smashes through the New Orleans ghetto and eventually finds the resistance.
I tell you, them goddamn Nazi sumbitches coming here, we gonna shoot their asses out, I tell you what. Going out in a blaze of glory, hallelujah!
You got a lot of good people here.
This is simultaneously my favorite and least favorite scene in the game. BJ finds Resistance leader Horton, the Professor, Paris Jack, and a small group of Bohemians sniping Nazis in the ghetto. Horton is a socialist turned anarchist and is reluctant to join up with the movement. They're doing just fine drinking themselves blind and killing Nazis till the death squads get here. Much to BJ's dismay, the plan isn't to beat the Nazis, it's to go down in a blaze of glory. To the backdrop of Paris Jack's clarinet and the Professor's rhythmic shots of a rifle, BJ and Horton start talking politics. It's Wolfenstein at its most confidently theatrical. The problem is Horton himself, who doesn't so much hold a political position as recite one. The imperialist war machine, the greedy money men of Wall Street, the children of the proletariat. He fires off the ideological buzzwords back to back, like a man reading the index of a pamphlet. It flattens him into a caricature rather than a person who genuinely believes something. It's worth noting that the game doesn't do this to Grace. Her beliefs are allowed to breathe, to come from grief and history. Horton's is a costume. A costume that's funny. It is funny for him and BJ to argue Bolshevism while heads explode outside, but it still means Horton isn't treated with sincerity. Something that makes him feel like a last-minute addition to the cast. It's a shame because the substance under the cartoon is real. When the Second World War came, a small number of people refused to fight it, on exactly Horton's grounds. The claim was that it was a rich man's war dressed up as a moral crusade. The Socialist Workers' Party were so committed to that line that the US government jailed 18 of them under the Smith Act. So, how true is Horton's claim? The men who fought and died were mainly, but not exclusively, working-class draftees. The deferment system had carve-outs for college students, academics, the men who ran war industry. Those carve-outs tracked class so plainly that even in 1944, labor leaders were calling out the machine of war. American corporate profits soared during the war, the same Wall Street that Horton's cursing did a roaring trade arming the fight that the sons of the poor were bleeding out in. He's not wrong about the shape of it. The men who profited and the men who died were, by and large, not the same men. But their sons were. Henry Ford, Nazi medal and all, had a grandson who enlisted in the Navy. Both of Thomas Watson's sons served, the founder of IBM. Winthrop Rockefeller joined an infantry division and was injured in 1941, earning a Bronze Star and Purple Heart. BJ doesn't mention any of that because both men are too drunk on moonshine to get their facts straight. He focuses on the simplicity of it all. More men would equal more victories, right? Well, statistically, he's wrong. The National World War II Museum in New Orleans, topical, says that the US had 43,000 conscientious objectors over the whole war. Of those, 25,000 served the military in non-combat roles. 12,000 did civilian public service in bases, stuff like firefighting or hospital work. That leaves just 6,000 Hortons who just flatly refused to cooperate and went to prison. 6,000 Hortons isn't a lot of Hortons. BJ's claim that they could stop the bomb falling on Manhattan or beat back Death's Head's magical war machine is frankly laughable. Horton talks systems, BJ talks dreams. He's got kids on the way and he'll be damned if he's going to raise them in a world run by Nazis. It's the same small, unshakable America from the very start of this video. The flag's in tatters, the economy is unimportant to him. He just wants Anya, the twins, and people at his table. Hitler had syphilis of the brain, and the horrible part was that the present-day German Empire was a product of that brain. First a political party, then a nation, then half the world. And the Nazis themselves had diagnosed it, identified it. The entire world knew it, and yet the leader's gabble was still sacred, still holy writ. The views had infected a civilization, and, like evil spores, the blind, blonde Nazi queens were swishing out from Earth to other planets, spreading their contamination. What you get for incest? Madness, blindness, death.
Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler?
Jens Mattis might not have read The Man in the High Castle, but someone at Machine Games definitely did, because the Nazis conquer Venus in that story too. We never see the polished space station or astronauts, but it's there, an example of how the Nazis were forever determined to just keep conquering. Thankfully, it's our next stop.
Venus. There is no way you are making it to Venus, sunshine. I don't care how mighty your arsenal or how much fucking manpower. There is not a hope in hell you can bypass all that security.
Yeah? Not with that attitude.
If we're going to free America, Frau Engel's Ausschmerzer is the key. It doesn't matter what we do, who we kill, or how many people join the cause. If we don't take out her floating fortress, it's all going to be for nothing. The only way to take it out is with special codes that were once with the Oberkommando in Area 52, but are now on the planet Venus. Now, a couple of things to note about this. The first is that this is the exact same setup as the end of the New Order. BJ needs to impersonate someone to go to space to steal codes before a big fight. The second is that this is only happening because BJ scared the Nazi leadership so much with his nuclear bomb that they fled the planet. I'm all for big cool explosions, but the way the new Colossus treats nukes is indicative of how confused its tone is. The Kreisau Circle, the good guys, deploy not one but two nuclear bombs during the game, one in Roswell and one in New Orleans. Our U-boat got stuck and the only way to escape was by firing a goddamn nuke, so the shockwave would push us back out to sea. It's strange that nobody in the cast questions this, because the game dedicates an entire level and numerous blood-curdling monologues to how awful and unnecessary nuclear weapons are. One minute, Grace is describing the grisly death of children. The next, she's handing BJ a nuke and ordering him to carry it down Main Street, USA. The Kreisau Circle were always blasé with their targets. In the first game, they unleash hell on the Gibraltar Bridge, but time is taken to point out that it's exclusively used by Nazi troops, not civilians. That time is not given to the new Colossus, and sometimes, emphasis on sometimes, it's not given to its heroes either. Our characters crack wise a lot. Fergus was our comedic monologuer in the New Order, and it worked because it was just him. Now, numerous characters talk like they joined an improv group. Horton is guilty from his first scene. Set Roth, especially, has transformed into an erratic, mad scientist rather than the quiet, deeply philosophical man from 6 months ago. Some of the jokes are funny. Super Spesh finding a toilet after years of shitting in a bucket. Bombate's love triangle. Anya calls into BJ to say that it might be the hormones talking, but all of this Nazi killings got her horny, just for the entire resistance to reveal they can hear her, but a lot of the comedy comes at the expense of our heroes. Something the New Order never, ever did. Just take Fergus. He's suffering from PTSD that is realized with the fact he keeps losing control of his robot arm. It beats the shit out of him, something that I personally found quite tragic. But mission briefings would come to a stop so we can all ogle the broken man mashing a cookie into the side of his face, and it's all played for laughs. Sigrun is a walking fat joke. Super Spesh believes in aliens, something that builds nicely off the world's lore because what he thinks are alien artifacts actually belong to the Dat Ye Should. He's killed without ever learning the truth, and his ignorance becomes his dying words, ranting about space aliens when Engel puts a bullet in him. Sometimes jokes that are at the expense of Nazis rebound and hit our cast. Anya is heavily pregnant, maybe weeks away from giving birth, yet she goes on field missions, putting herself and her babies in danger unnecessarily. The gag is that even a pregnant woman can find time to kill some Nazis. What's your excuse? Look at them dying as she guns them down topless. BJ's never been more in love, but the joke falls flat because I'm just uncomfortable about her being in an active war zone. Get out of here, Anya. You don't see Grace on the front line, do you? BJ, say something. The importance of mocking Nazis still burns bright through the game, and on Venus, it even finds time to focus on the Führer himself.
I loved it, Mr. Hitler. Super good.
Mr. Hitler? Wenn Sie mich ansprechen, sagen Sie mein Führer.
BJ makes it to Venus, disguised as a Hollywood actor, Jules Redfield. He's here to audition for a movie called Das Ende alles Bösen, The End of Evil. It tells the story of the capture and execution of Terror Billy. BJ is auditioning for the role of himself. Hitler wrote it and is producing it, so we get locked in a room with him for 20 minutes. In universe, Hitler is 72. He's confused, rambling, coughing up a storm, shaking. He waves a gun around, it spits in their faces, pisses on the floor, and fantasizes about his mother. This is all, speculatively, quite realistic. We know that those around him spotted the trembling hand he hid behind his back, the shuffle, the stoop of a man decades older than his age. Syphilis was rumoured, but most historians reckon it was Parkinson's. His personal doctor, Theodore Morell, was pumping him full of a daily cocktail of amphetamines, sedatives, and opioids that would fell a horse. The shaking, dying Führer avoids being a cartoon because it's history. The question is whether the game's laughing at that, or just a sick old man. The sequence pulls no punches. Aside from BJ's beheading, it's the most famous part of the game, completely hilarious, and doesn't fall into the same trap as the tone of the Cries Out circle for a couple of reasons. The build-up is key. We pick up numerous conversations and documents that detail propaganda pitching him as a great, healthy, sharp-minded man who will live forever. It's the same sort of propaganda that propagated Germany. When the game gives us a Hitler that's the opposite of that, the contrast is sharp and darkly funny. This guy conquered the world? I think Death's Head contributed more than we thought. The second reason is that Nazis in the scene suffer for letting him reign. Lady Helene, the director of the movie, writhes in embarrassment as Hitler cuddles into her, throws up on the floor, and shoots her actors. Eventually, BJ kills a guard as part of the physical audition, and Hitler doesn't care because he thinks he's found the perfect actor to play Terror Billy. He will sacrifice dozens of soldiers if it makes his movie better. The third reason is that a lot of the comedy is Hitler-specific. The most iconic moment is when he shoots an actor for calling him Mr. Hitler. He spirals into a paranoid rant, accuses the guy of being a Jew, and then empties a full clip into him. Fun fact, in the German version of this game, the line was different. Hitler doesn't call the actor a Jew, he just calls him a traitor. Up until 2018, depictions of Nazis were heavily censored in Germany, to the point that the Wolfenstein tie-in comic replaced swastikas with triangles and even the word Nazi with fascist, simply because it would be too expensive to print two versions. Regardless of what you think about it as an effective policy, it shows one thing: Germany's policymakers treated its national shame with outright sanctioned disgust, not something to be debated or whitewashed. Wow, the American Civil War sure was complicated. Hitler asks everyone repeatedly if they've read Mein Kampf and takes full credit for capturing BJ. He even brags about it to Frau Engel. His ego is so massive that he has to be responsible for it. It's all pure spectacle. After the moon in New Order, Venus has to justify itself. It does that by kidding Mr. Hitler.
You monster! What are you going to do to me?
I will cake and butter you.
New Colossus is tonally broader than New Order. It does gross-out comedy, satire, grief, romance, and pulp action, sometimes in the same scene. But that ambition costs it control. The New Order had a strict rule with its tone. A joke could be turned into a sincere moment, but a sincere moment could not be turned into a joke. The New Colossus breaks this rule. Not always, but enough times that it starts to feel jarring. Meeting Hitler starts sincere because of who he is in the halls of history, but it's then turned into a series of very funny jokes that don't stop. There's an obvious comparison to be drawn between this scene and when BJ meets Frau Engel in the New Order. At gunpoint, she forces us to prove we're not a Jew by doing a bastardized Rorschach test. She's not presented as a joke. Instead, that game rightfully emphasizes her threat, and there's no way for the player to turn her into a joke. The New Colossus gives us that opportunity. We audition for Hitler at gunpoint and need to remember our lines. The game gives us 4 options, and every time there is a hilarious one to choose. Fergus is an example that we've talked about at length, but Sigrun joins him. When she finally snaps at Grace, it's initially treated as sincere. She's been bullied for the whole game, she's crying, but the game swats those feelings aside so she can joke about sex. The tone of the New Colossus is conflicted and frustrating because when it sticks to the rules of the New Order, we get some of the best writing Machine Games has ever delivered.
Wyatt, I'm your buddy, remember?
He saw perfect patterns. Swallowing branches of a great tree.
BJ tricks Hitler, grabs the codes, and heads back to base. The Kreisau Circle are waiting with a cake, candles, and party hats that Max has designed specifically for each person. Horton's has a hammer and sickle on it, very silly. It turns out that it's BJ's birthday. Meeting Hitler was one hell of a present, and a rambunctious montage leads us through various drunken antics that come to a screeching halt the morning after. Wyatt is missing. If New Colossus fails Fergus, it handles Wyatt with care. At first, it seems like his psychedelic trips are the punchline. Just like Fergus, he's the butt of the joke, but that is later subverted. The drugs are letting his mind expand, to the point he starts to understand the language of the Dat You Should. Set Roth obsesses over a mysterious artifact called the God Key. He can't figure it out. Wyatt alludes to his true purpose. He sees beyond. His disappearance leads to a gorgeous scene where he snaps and tries to kill himself. He confesses that his father cut him off after he left to join the military. His mother overdosed on pills. BJ saves him, brings him back, and reminds him not to forget who he is. They're soldiers. Wyatt is part of his family. The jokes crack open to reveal pure, unbridled sincerity. The tragedy of Wyatt's scene isn't just that it's beautiful, it's that it and everything surrounding BJ's childhood is proof. The New Colossus knew, all along, exactly how to hold a wound without laughing at it. It just kept deciding not to. Their view, it is cosmic. Not a man here, a child there, but an abstraction. Race, land, Volk, land, Blut, air. Not of honorable men, but air itself. Honor, the abstract, is real. The actual is invisible to them. In 2011, a German author called Timur Vermes released a book called Look Who's Back. It follows Adolf Hitler suddenly waking up in modern-day Berlin. He decides to use this bizarre new situation as an opportunity to regain political power, and Germany thinks he's just a highly committed comedian, so they don't take him seriously. That means he gets onto radio, talk shows, all sorts, and seizes the zeitgeist. It's a hilarious book because Vermes' writing is stark and frank, but also because he uses Hitler as a catalyst to explore how easily extreme figures can weaponize pop culture. At one point, the resurrected Führer monologues. We all know, of course, what to make of our newspapers. The deaf man writes down what the blind man has told him, the village idiot edits it, and their colleagues in the other press houses copy it. Each story is doused afresh with the same stagnant infusion of lies, so that the splendid brew can then be served up to a clueless Volk. That is Frau Engel's strength. Charisma and an understanding of the media is her superpower. When we steal her Auschmerzer, she is miles away on the Jimmy Carver show.
You all saw the pictures. There was a lot of blood. Things got messy. But through it all I could think was how this man took my beloved daughter's secret from me.
The game correctly identifies that its villain has evolved. Engel is most dangerous as a politician, administrator, and celebrity rather than a military leader like Death's Head. Hitler might be the Führer, but she's effectively America's new leader. Nazis, pundits, and sympathizers worship her, and those who hate her are right to be afraid. However, its finale doesn't evolve with her. The climax spends its energy on the Auschmerzer, a level we already explored and conquered in the game's opening, rather than somewhere new and interesting like the talk show. That instead is relegated to an epilogue. It's similar to how the New Order opened and closed with Death's Head's castle, and as a sequel, Colossus loves its parallels, but it's still a disappointment. The Auschmerzer isn't a particularly interesting setting for a final fight. It's clanking tunnels, control rooms, and vast arenas that inhibit stealth. It's nothing we haven't seen before. Unless you count the Horde mission, which I don't, there's no boss fight here to put a gameplay button alongside the story button. That lends to Engel's bureaucratic role, but there was still room for a big rambunctious fight here. Give her a loyal bodyguard, a new boy toy that replaced Booby so the game didn't climax with faceless goons. Anya joins BJ on the mission to add a different flavor, but as an NPC, she doesn't help in fights, and narratively might as well not be here. In fact, I'd rather she wasn't, because again, you are pregnant, Anya, get out of here! Context helps the tone. Our mission kicks off the morning after BJ's birthday. Everybody is hungover. Irene Engel thought she killed Terror Billy, but he returns, stinking of moonshine and nursing a headache.
You're my wolf now. These are our words.
When we first met her back in the New Order, Engel was the old kind of monster. She ran a concentration camp. Her power was the furnace in the prison, meaning she was Death's Head's world and Death's Head's kind of horror. By the new Colossus, she shed that skin entirely. She's the Nazi film Triumph of the Will incarnate. She is a celebrity. The guardian angel of occupied America, the hunter of freedom fighters, doing her real work not in a camp, but on television. Hosting broadcasts where she saws resistance fighters apart for a live audience, performing cruelty as light entertainment. When BJ becomes a folk hero, Engel attacks his reputation first. She does this by lying. Constantly. Unendingly. It's a tactic pulled from Hitler himself. To quote Mein Kampf, "The receptivity of the masses is very limited. Their intelligence is small, but their power of forgetting is enormous. In consequence of all these facts, all effective propaganda must be limited to a very few points and must harp on these in slogans until the last member of the public understands." When we find Engel, she's broadcasting. The Jimmy Carver show is a false filter for her bullshit. What she's saying would be weaker if she just stood on a pedestal and beamed it into every house in America, but because the talk show has the illusion of an interview, because Jimmy Carver acts as mediator between her and the viewer, it's easier to swallow what she's saying. The Nazis had the big lie that had to be repeated over and over. The modern version, Engel, floods you with dozens of little lies instead, so you can't keep up. BJ's capture was by Hitler. It wasn't. We kidnapped her daughter. We didn't. She even, much like William Dudley Pelley did, hints that Terror Billy was a literal demon. Regardless of the output, the goal is the same, and was written about by the philosopher Hannah Arendt in The Origins of Totalitarianism. Quote, "The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction and the distinction between true and false no longer exists." She swapped the camp for the celebrity's smile, from one big lie to lots of little ones. The monster has changed form. Engel flirts with BJ. She licks his face as he lies helpless. She forces her gun into his mouth and leers at him. At his execution, she flirts with him and steals his engagement ring. It's grotesque and deliberate. In Fascinating Fascism, Susan Sontag argued that fascism's trappings are inherently sexualized, that domination and desire in the fascist imagination are the same current. Engel personifies that idea. She's a shagger for the Reich, having pumped out 6 kids and always keeping a boy toy close by. She gets off on total control over another human being. The ring theft is the sharpest version of this. She doesn't just want to kill BJ, she wants to possess his intimacy, make his love a thing she can pocket. For Engel, cruelty and desire were never separate. Domination is the romance, it's what makes their back and forth so captivating, and it's why it matters that BJ kills her himself. Just like his father, Engel dies in a cutscene, and because she weaponized the media, the fact it happens on camera is her greatest downfall.
My brothers and sisters of the United States of America, tonight, we the free people of the resistance ask you to become one of us.
That clumsy streak we've talked about elsewhere returns hard with the ending. A disappointing metal cover of We're Not Gonna Take It shrieks over the credits. The original would have been much better to harness the cheese. The feeling of the whole thing shifts too, depending on which timeline you're in. Unlike The New Order, there are 2 different endings. In both, the resistance doesn't answer the regime with a bomb, but a signal. They take back the airwaves that Engel poisoned and put the truth on them instead, calling the whole country to its feet. However, what that truth is, and what that country can embody, is different if you brought Fergus or Wyatt. In Wyatt's ending, Grace hands the camera to him approvingly, tells him to address the American people. He speaks to them with poetry, weaving a tale of liberty, a land of the free, reminding them of the Declaration of Independence. He talks of a great country that would have stayed great had it not been pillaged by the Nazis. He builds up an American dream that the game has spent its runtime dismantling. It's beautiful imagery, but it rings hollow. In Fergus's ending, Grace and Horton look down the camera and speak to the people with righteous anger. Anger at those who haven't fought back yet and instead have grown comfortable under a regime their conscience shouldn't abide. There's no talk of America as an entity, instead, the movement is pitched as a reset. The US is a collective that can and should use its liberation as an opportunity to become something better and something new. This ending isn't as flowery as Wyatt's, but it's more powerful because it ties everything together without relying on some illusion that historic hypocrisy has constantly shattered. It's a shame only 50% of players get to see it. The message is strong, but it doesn't matter to BJ Blazkowicz. While Grace, Horton, or Wyatt speak to the camera, he's scanning the corpse of Frau Engel. He's trying to find the engagement ring she stole. Right to the end, he's a man laser-focused on his personal, intimate American dream. Every villain in this game is chasing it. Rip wanted the ranch and the status, the payoff for playing along, and he sold his wife, friends, and soul to get it. Engel wanted a whole country drooling over her, the guardian angel on every screen. Hitler is vomiting on Venus, putting his ego on the big screen. Same dream every time. Purity and permanence. It's the dream that says some people are the story and the rest are set dressing. The game's answer to that is the Kreisau Circle. A pregnant immigrant, a tortured man, a German girl who refused the teachings of her mother, a Jewish scientist with a camp number on his skin, a black revolutionary, an anarchist, the impure, broken, foreign, and grieving. Together, they build a counter-dream. A family of the flawed that liberty would welcome, and crucially, are taking action. The man in the high castle put it best. The mind of the enemy sees only the abstraction and ignores the details. Race, blood, Volk, the dream.
You make me strong and weak at the same time. Will you marry me?
BJ might struggle to articulate it, but maybe that's what makes it important. The monster changes shape, but so does the dream.
The sun don't reach, weary eyes know the light don't pierce. down in the mine. 40 years, like 40 lives, only whistles blowing to mark the time. Oh, way, way down we go. Gotta rip that soul out of the ground while we walk that long wall to the sound of hammer and steel, steel on stone. Yeah, we work those fingers to the bone. Way, way down we go. Try to save my soul down deep where the river flows. Lord, help me bear that load. Break my back for dark black gold. With every scar etched in my hands, that's the price of the promised land. I'll take my money, what's left of my pride, and escape across that county line. Start some